my name's Xteen, and I challenged myself to cook something different every day for 30 days. Today is day 28 of that challenge. We are nearing the end. The finish line is in sight. It also happens to be soup season, so we're going to lean into that. And I'm going to be making the New York Times lentil tomato soup recipe. I love a good lentil soup. I love a good tomato soup. The marriage of the two could be big. This recipe seems pretty straightforward, pretty quick. I've never made it before, but I will let you know how it is. We're starting by melting 5 tablespoons of butter. The recipe only calls for 4, but I had this chunk of butter sitting in the fridge and I thought, why not just use the whole thing? Close enough. And now the recipe says to carefully add 1 cup of heavy cream. I think it's funny that they specified to do it carefully. We're bringing this to a boil and then simmering until the cream thickens and resembles melted cheese with brown bits around the pot. This browning of the butter process took much longer than was suggested by the recipe, and after reading through the comments, I'm not even sure I browned it enough. Anyway, let's add 2 medium shallots finely chopped. And continue stirring for 4 to 5 more minutes until there's very little cream at the bottom. And now for a 28-ounce can of whole tomatoes. The recipe says you could crush them with your hands as you dump them into the pot, but that seems unnecessarily messy, so I'm opting to use a potato masher instead. The recipe calls for 1 15-ounce can of canned lentils. But I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna use dry lentils. I should have added less raw lentils than I did. More on that later. And they'll have time to cook in the pot. I'm not worried about it. Look at her. So smug. Who uses canned lentils? I stand by this, and I'm not the only one who thinks this. All people in Brooklyn feel this way, or at least me and Amy both do. I'm going to stir in my lentils and then add 2 cups of water. And as you can see, I'm adding a generous amount of salt. The recipe calls for a big pinch, and that's the only seasoning the recipe calls for. I'm also going to add chili powder because I just feel like everything's better with chili powder, and only seasoning with salt seems suspect to me. I'm nervous about it. I have questions. Now we're going to bring this up to a boil and partially cover it with a lid. Okay, soup is boiling. We're gonna let it boil for 15 minutes, stirring occasionally. In the meantime, check out how good Sonia is at catching treats. Look at this. So as the soup boiled, the raw lentils sucked up most of the liquid to cook themselves, making the soup much thicker than it was supposed to be. I'm not mad at a thick soup, but these lentils also didn't soften up during the 15 minutes of boiling as much as I would have liked, so that was my bad. If I made this again, I would cook them a little before adding them in, or add significantly less and let it boil for a little longer. We're finishing with another 1/3 cup of heavy cream, which honestly seems completely unnecessary. It was plenty creamy already. And a little more salt in a desperate last effort to get some flavor in there. The texture of this reminded me so much of chili that I just instinctively topped it with cheddar cheese. It came out a little thicker than I was expecting. Cheers. I feel like it could have benefited from some garlic. A little under-seasoned. Again, I'm not the only one who thinks so. Which is sort of par for the course with the New York Times recipe. Cheese helps. On a little toast, why not? The little toasts are delicious. Bruschetini. Team dry lentils. Hashtag dry lentils only. I'm so sorry, I don't mean to alienate you if you like canned lentils.